I never watched Buffy. I know. I know. As such a... Like,
that's going to be the cold open right there.
Let me kind of unpack that for you a little bit.
Yeah, brother! Welcome to the life after.
This is still macho.
We're
man,
watching
Randy
after
Savage.
you. Hulk Hogan.
I've never seen this side of you, Chuck. Welcome to Life After. This is Brady Harden, and I am here with Macho Man Randy Savage. Are you all ready for this? Second Saturday! We'll have a rumble!
Oh my god.
Hey Chuck, welcome to the Life After.
Hey Brady, welcome to the life after.
Today we are going to be speaking to...
Who are we kidding? We're lounging. We've been lounging in the life after for a hot minute now. Welcome whoever's new. Welcome whoever's new to the
welcome
life
to
after.
you people that
Welcome
just walked
you people
in.
to the life after, because this is a luxury resort we've been working on for... Well, okay, it's like a budget resort.
Yeah.
It's a budget resort, but we're working on it, dude.
It's like one of those facades in the movies, but you kind of look at it from a different angle, and it's like, oh, that's a flat building.
If you've ever been to a nice hotel in a developing country, that's pretty much what it's like.
Or if you've ever seen Kid Nation, wherever they filmed that. Do you remember Kid
Like
Nation?
I've been to a resort in Belize, but you still had to, like, the water table's really high there, so you still had to put your toilet paper in the trash can.
Oh,
you
yeah,
can't
yeah.
flush it.
I've been on mission trips.
It's kind of like that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we're working on it.
I remember, like, what is this little trash can for?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Speaking of which, have you seen Kid Nation?
I've only seen bits of it, but that show was brilliant.
That was brilliant.
And I'm so sad that it doesn't exist anymore.
My friend Cynthia and I were really into it, and we would root for those children every week. And gosh, all their little chapped lips, I just wanted to give them chapstick.
Their little chapped lips.
Their little chapped lips. Well, today we are speaking to a good friend of mine, Carrie. And the cool thing about Carrie is I met
Friend
her...
of the show.
Friend of the show. I met her because of the show.
Right.
And so she's kind of like, you know how Joey Hill was last season, where it's like somebody that we've met and we've gotten to know who's like part of our daily
Active
lives,
part of the
etc.
community.
Somebody that we've met online.
100% online.
Do you have friends like that?
As a matter of fact, I have not been to the place that she is from. Well, I have, but it's been many years since I was there, and it would not be practical for me to go there now.
Way to drop that you've been to Australia.
Australia.
Humbly. Oh, have I been? Oh, yeah, I think I have, if I remember correctly.
Australia. Do you believe I remember? Yes. Underwhelming. Underwhelming, really.
Really?
No, it was amazing. It was mind-blowing.
What took you to Australia?
My dad's company had a really good year, so like almost everybody that was like in any important position got to go to the summit, the company's summit in Australia. Wow. And they paid for my parents, and my parents had to pay for me to go, which was expensive, but it wasn't, as expensive as it would be for the three of us to go stay on a really nice resort in Cairns, Australia. It was really sweet.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. I was 14, so I didn't really appreciate it as much as I would have, but I had a fantastic time.
I feel like 14, you're starting to get old enough to be able to write poetry if you wanted to, and
right.
So you
I
you
was
could appreciate
just on
something.
the cusp of. If I was any younger, I'd be like, "Why did I even go?" You know what I mean? I wouldn't have really absorbed it, but it was a great experience. Anyway, our guest is from Australia.
Yeah, very much so. Let's just bring her on. Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
Welcome to the show.
Hi. That was very amusing.
Thank you. Carrie,
please don't ever try to do an Australian accent again.
Oh, that was not me doing an Australian accent.
Yeah, that was more of a British accent.
That was me doing a pretentious British accent.
Well, you were just trying to do a British one. I think the pretentious came naturally.
My Australian accent is too weak for me to even try it on the show. But it's nothing like my Macho Man Randy Savage.
I used to be good at accents in fourth grade.
That was more Ultimate Warrior at the beginning, just to clarify. Anyway.
Who is Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh, you're so Australian.
Yeah, he was a professional wrestler who's now passed away.
He was like Hulk Hogan era
He was-
professional wrestler.
Oh,
Yeah.
what's
like-
that thing Hulk Hogan says? And Cindy in Kimmy Schmidt always says it. Something, brother.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, what is that?
I forget what.
I think you just did it, didn't you?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I
just
never
know
watched
Snap.
wrestling.
System.
That woo was so loud that my computer was like, I don't know what the fuck to do with that, and it just
I didn't know
stopped
that was a
recording.
thing.
No,
Wow.
I've never done that before, ever, and I've been doing this a long time.
When I was in 4th grade, I got a part in a play because I was able to do an accent. But on the night of the performance, I couldn't do it. So I just spoke normal lines, and everybody was so disappointed in me. So
Yeah.
I used to be good at accents. I had a really good Joey Gladstone where he'd be like that little that groundhog thing that he would do. Where he's like, do I smell? I used to do really good, but my falsetto is so shitty now. And all of my accents just kind of sound like a really bad impression of an Indian person. So I try not to do accents anymore because it gets real offensive,
Get real racist real fast.
Yeah, like a baby boomer trying to speak in tongues.
Oh yeah. We covered that one. We covered that one on this show. Brady, what's on your mind?
I want to learn about Carrie today. Carrie, can you give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself and who you are and what kind of story we're going to dive into?
Brady, how do you see me? I'd love to know how you see me as a friend. How about you introduce?
Oh God. Okay.
There you go. I like her. I like
Recently, here's something I learned.
Do you like the little shimmy I did?
Yeah, she just turned that shit around. Man.
So Carrie is a really good friend of mine, and we love to talk about leaving religious shit because that's obvious where you came from. Where I came from, one thing that we do not have in common that I like about our friendship is that I'm a very secular, rational based person. You practice witchcraft and you do that well, and you explain it well in a way that makes sense to me and isn't scary to me. We really bond over that. We bond over mental health things of self-care, bond over stories. Oh my God, you and I really feel like what solidified my friendship with you, Carrie, is whenever we got Netflix party and we started watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch together. And I feel like that was such a cool moment because I was going through a lonely time. You were there. And even though you were in Australia, here we are watching this TV show together, chatting it up, talking shit. And I don't know, that's how I see you. I see you as a strong woman who's gone through a lot, who's learned a lot, and you have a very natural wiring and disposition to help take what I would call in my Joseph Campbellian hero's journey talk. You take the elixirs that you've won in your life, the answers, the solutions to the problems that you have, and you don't keep them to yourself. You naturally share them with every fucking person as you can. So and when it comes to elixir talk, you're kind of like a bartender, and that's what I love about you. And that's what I like having you on the show today is because you're going to be talking about the shit that you've gone through, what you learned from it. And then naturally, it's just going to be an avenue for you to be able to share what you've learned from your experiences to people where they don't have to go through the experiences you had to learn what you learned. They can just kind of accept it from your experience. And that's how you are. That's how gracious you are.
Whoa.
Hey, Carrie.
That was really lovely.
That was a good.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm good at introductions sometimes.
Oh my God.
Brady just ran with it, man.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
So yeah, how do I respond to that?
Thank you, Brady, for that. Really, that was a little bit much.
Was it extra
of an intro? Yeah.
That is my middle name.
Cool. No, I'm just kidding. Carrie's awesome. We're excited to do this interview. We're gonna take a quick break. Before we do that, quick trigger warning. Mm-hmm. We are going to deal with subject matter that involves abuse. We are going to deal with oh Jesus, what all do I need to do trigger warnings for?
Okay, so childhood sexual abuse, racially motivated attempted murder,
okay,
spiritual warfare culture, and intimate partner sexual violence.
Okay, thank you. When we get back.
Oh, hello there, Chuck. I didn't see you there. How are you?
Good, just editing the episode. What's up?
What's up? Oh, you commoner and your common talk. I guess I'm what you would say, doing not much.
What is this?
Chuck, psst, psst, Chuck, it's me, your pal Brady. I'm practicing patronizing, so I'm working on being more condescending to people. Oh, do you have any idea where man can get some crumpets around here?
Why are you doing this?
You know, for our Patreon, we've been asking people to patronize our page, and I didn't want to ask them to do something I wasn't willing to do myself, so I figured I'd get some practice in.
Oh, God. Brady, no, that's not what it means.
Oh, no?
Listen, listeners can go to our Patreon page, pick the level you want to contribute.
Oh.
Each level has special rewards.
Okay.
Like exclusive Life After minisodes.
Or not safe for work bloopers?
Or like a monthly collection of deconstruction memes.
And even personal consultations or meet up with your favorite host, Chuck and Brady?
Yeah. Brady. Patreon.com/thelifeafter.
I guess even you could find it.
And welcome back to The Life After.
I hope you all really enjoyed the commercial you just listened to.
It was, yes. I love that commercial.
Carrie,
We're here
welcome
with
to
our
the
guest,
show.
Carrie.
Yeah, we're so, can you, give us the lowdown. I want to hear your story and what we can learn from it.
So Carrie, you started off as a child. As many people do. But in all seriousness, you grew up in a pretty tumultuous environment, and I feel like, having heard parts of your story, that your beliefs in that the church and the Bible all sort of played a role in why your childhood went the way that it did. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I grew up in a family where my father was an atheist and my mum was a Christian, and she raised us as Christians. And this was really difficult for us I'm going to speak for myself. I'm the eldest of 6 children, so our experience of our family life was very different, incredibly varied. I'm the eldest girl and the eldest sibling, and then I have a brother who comes after me, and so his experience was quite different. For me, I was raised in a way that positioned men as far superior to women. My mum was into Debbie Pearl, and her book, Created to Be His Helpmeet. It didn't come out until
that title.
I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it didn't come out till I was a teenager, but it essentially sort of fit in with her worldview already. And so, like, bless her, I have an amazing relationship with my mum now. We've worked really, really hard to get to this place where we are now. But as the eldest daughter, I was there to serve, and I was there to do, and I was there to prop up my father as the head of the house. And this allowed him to have a lot of leeway to do things that he shouldn't have done.
Mm-hmm.
And he was quite violent growing up. He had his good points. Like, this is the thing, is like, no abuser is like fully bad.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's important to acknowledge, really.
It really is. It really, really is. Because if we just paint them in this sort of like black and white way, totally dismisses their humanity. You know, we all do fucked up shit. I'm not justifying abuse.
Well, it's easier to be in denial about abuse when you're looking for somebody that is like evil all the time, right? You know, whereas abusers are they have their moments where they're good people and they help you, and and it's important to be realistic about that and still acknowledge that they're abusers.
It's so true. It's 100% true. And so this sort of, I guess it conditioned me to become very obeisant in my life generally toward men. And it's not why I keep apologizing to you guys, by the way. That's just a byproduct of that sort of stuff. But I've worked really hard on that over the years. It gave me this sense of inferiority from a really, really young age, that just as a girl, I didn't have value. My mum didn't have value as a wife. I was exposed to pornography at a really young age. Can I say what kind, or is it like too much?
No, go for it.
Because it's kind of valid in terms of how it shaped me.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
I don't want to like traumatize anyone. So I was exposed to bestial pornography at like 9 or 10. Yeah. And I'm not going to go into detail, obviously, but it sort of made me believe that if this was happening to other women and that somebody I loved and cared about enjoyed it, then perhaps that was happening in their relationship and that I would have to do that as a woman. And I remember as a little girl making a vow, I will never, ever let that happen. For better or for worse, that vow took place because I shut my heart off at a very young age. So I wasn't very receptive to receiving love or anything like that. However, sorry, so much for keeping it in 5 minutes.
No, that's good. That's good.
All of that stuff was taking place. And, you know, I was sort of trying to protect my siblings as well. And that really made them resent me a lot because I wasn't their parent, but I was kind of forced to discipline them or else I'd get punished. So it was a really unfair situation. And on top of that, I was experiencing a lot of bullying at school because of my ethnicity. And, yeah, I had an experience where a group of about 11 boys tried to hang me and kill me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah, they literally tried to lynch me. Well, I mean, look, I'm white passing for the most part. I mean, unless I'm wearing this wig, I guess that maybe I look like a little bit more ethnic. But for the most part, like these days I am white passing. But, you know, I used to get picked on because I was a nigger or an Abbo or whatever. Abbo is like the N word here for Aboriginal. Yeah, and they just use a skipping rope actually to like drag me around the school and then they strung it over the beam in the cubby house, and a teacher finally came and helped me, and he only got 1 demerit point.
Wow.
And you needed 3 points to get a lunch detention, right?
God.
And so this sense of inferiority was so deeply ingrained that I actually didn't tell anybody that this happened. It was just sort of like, oh, well, this is how I get treated. And about 3 weeks later, I mentioned it in passing to my mum. It was like, oh, that time I nearly died and got when they tried to hang me. And she's like, what? I'm like, oh, yeah. And so she tried to deal with that at the school, and they were like, oh, kids are just being kids. You're making a big deal out of it. And then they tried to do it again.
Wow.
But they didn't hang me this time. They tried to tear me in half with a skipping rope. Like they tied it around my waist and they played tug of war with me.
Jesus.
Oh, it's so weird sharing this story publicly. I definitely see that as something that played a big role in me devaluing my body and devaluing myself.
Deep breath.
Yeah, and I used to come home and I used to stare in the mirror and I'd be like, try to use mind over matter to like shrink my nose because I thought I had this horrible, you know, big nose or something. And I know that like I don't actually really have a big nose, but like that's what I thought. And so, yeah, cut to when I was 18, my father had been removed by Human Services and my family was just in crisis. And it was a really tough time because, you know, we had faith in God, but we didn't know where to turn. We weren't attending a church or anything at that point. And we found a place and it was at Open Doors. I didn't attend initially. My mum did, and it took me a couple of months to actually warm up to the idea of going. And, yeah, the pastor, Michelle, she was so, it's going to sound like such a cliche, but she was so charismatic, guys. Like, she was so cool, and she was so, like, she dressed really cool, and she was so, like, she knew everything that was relevant to teenagers and young people.
How old
like,
were you?
You know,
like, how old were you about this time?
I was 18,
okay.
So technically an adult.
Okay.
You're not really an adult when you're 18.
Sure, yeah.
Fucking child.
Right.
Yeah, so it was like bit by bit who she was started to slip out, like, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And first I noticed something was off with her was when I attended church by myself And my mum had stayed home to look after my younger siblings because they'd come down with like gastro or something. And in front of everyone, she asked me, "Where's my mum?" And I said, "She's at home looking after the kids." And she yelled at me and said, "That's not good enough." And I just sort of sat there, and everybody else just kind of looked down and looked away. And I was like,
What the hell?
oh, okay. And then she went on this big spiel about how if you have faith in God, then you push through your sickness and you don't let it stop you from doing things.
Wow.
That was just the beginning of it, you know?
I want to go back a little bit because everything leading up to that, I just feel like your obviously very tumultuous childhood led up to this point where you were subject to this person that turned out to be a really toxic, terrible, sociopathic person. But you felt like your Christian beliefs about submission and about your relationship to your parents made you a little bit more susceptible to the abuse that was happening, right?
Absolutely. You know, like in the Bible, how it says that, you know, you're not supposed to touch God's anointed, you know, and anyone in a position of leadership is there because God has placed them. And so when we obey our leaders, we're disobeying God.
God.
And that's how I looked at things with my dad, even though like I was just suffering so much. And I saw my siblings suffering and my mum suffering. And she even used to confide in me. So that made it like double difficult because I was like doing all this emotional labor on behalf of my mum as a child. And so when I started going to this church, despite my own intuition, despite my own, you know, my previous experience of having seen people like this do what they do. Okay, so have you guys heard of thought stoppers?
Thought stoppers, no.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so it's a term that is used in the literature regarding high demand groups. And they're usually like phrases or, I don't know, terms related to the particular culture of the group that literally stop your thoughts. And I think that in churches, one of the things that gets used a lot is you need to honor the pastor and trust God to fix what is happening. Like essentially let them do what they're doing and God will take care of it. And you know what? He fucking does.
Last part, he never does.
So
he doesn't do it.
So when you...
Because he's not real. But no, different discussion. But you know what I mean? Like, I remember praying and praying and praying, and Dad didn't stop doing what he was doing. And for 6 years, I did the same thing with Michelle, and it got worse.
God.
So what you're saying about thought stop, I really like that phrase. Thought stoppers. The one that comes to the really obvious one that comes to mind for me is have faith.
Have faith, right?
It's just like you don't have enough faith or trust God or His ways are higher than your way. It's like anything that prevents you from following through with questioning what's happening, right? Or what you're supposed to believe.
And all of these things are pulling from some sort of abstract, invisible thing. You know, it's not like you can say, it can't produce anything to show the importance of this. It's just, oh, trust me, this is a supernatural authority.
Right.
You know, like that's who's giving us authority. And so it's pulling from this like thing that you can't show for as a placeholder for the people's credibility that haven't earned that credibility.
Yeah.
So it's like you're putting this faith as a placeholder, and that should only be like a trial run, right? Like, yeah, I'll trust you for a little bit.
I feel like
until you can prove yourself, and then after that, then you need to stand on your own.
That's a much more reasonable way of thinking. I feel like my brain is just like, I feel like there are like 100 or 1,000, you know,
more
thousands
stoppers,
of these, just like that we run into all the
They
time.
are.
They're everywhere. that's really interesting.
And it's so, like, that's the point, I suppose, is they're supposed to be, I guess, in like undetectable to a degree,
like magic words
because they're so embedded in the culture that you don't question them. And like one thing that I'm really like interested in, I can talk about this more later in terms of like my life now, but I know you guys would understand this because I've heard both of your stories. But the idea of spiritual autonomy and that sense of like, not just, you know, how we were told, this is another one, you have free will.
Right.
You don't have free will. You have a fucking dichotomy. You don't have you really don't have options.
Right. Yeah.
You have two options, and it's heaven or hell, God or Satan.
Yeah. Right.
And what we should really have is this sense of freedom and agency to not just explore, negotiate our relationship to those things that are unseen. And I'm not just talking about like, you know, like if there is sort of like a metaphysical plane of existence and that's what works for you, sure. But like even the emotional realm, you know, like how you navigate that and how you relate to yourself and other people emotionally and experience the world emotionally. We were not given a chance to do that on our own terms. When you're born into Christianity, you're just not.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And I think it sort of sets you up to have this sort of default. You suspend belief, you suspend questioning all the time because you have, like Chuck said, you've got to have faith.
Yeah.
God, that's messed up.
You know, and what you were saying about submission to authority, I mean, like, we've talked about that and we've thought about it a lot, and like, I'm just realizing that, like, that is the language of manipulative power structures. Right? I mean, it's like, so I, like, kind of a funny story. I took a psych eval last week.
Did you pass?
It was a pass fail. I got a 65, so I'm good. I got a D, solid D. No. I just really wanted an official ADD diagnosis is what I was going for, which is because I'm so ADD. And my doctor needed me to take a psych eval. Anyway, one of the things that they wrote in the psych eval was he may have a problem with authority. To the incomplete sentence, police are, he responded, tools of the system to maintain the established order at the expense of marginalized people. And I was like, I don't know if that's... What'd you say?
The greatest answer ever.
I was like, is that real? Does that mean I have a problem with authority, or does that mean I'm a fucking thinking person?
Right?
Right? Like, I mean,
no, it means that the system that's assessing you is predominantly full of white people,
right?
Who claim that you know, opposing oppression is somehow related to mental illness.
The implication is that I should not question the police as an institution, like why I shouldn't question why they have authority or what authority they should have, right? And that's the attitude that it's like God gave you your parents, he chose your parents, you are he gave them
always
to you and he gave you to them, and there's an inherent hierarchy, and the implication is that they are going to do exactly what they are supposed to do, whether that's completely evil or completely good. But the language, they're doing what they're supposed to do, and that's what's ordained for you.
The language is so slave servant. I mean, as you're explaining your childhood, I was very much like that kid who was, I went on mission trips and stuff when I was like 14. Even before that, coming from a more of abusive home and everything, I wanted to be the one who was there to take care of everybody else. One of my parents relied on me emotionally to, counteract the other parent's emotional abuse. And so that was my job as a kid. I'm the servant. I want to be a servant. I want to serve the Lord. I want to serve. Lord. Trust and obey. Trust and obey. Trust and obey.
Lord. Serve.
Everything was just like these very like slave master terminology, and that became who my personality was. And so a lot of times I became more responsible for people's emotional things or even physical needs or whatever, because I was always encouraged to be a servant.
No question as to whether or not you were like okay doing any of that, right? Like whether you were emotionally prepared, whether you had what
anybody
that person
who knew me
needed.
knew that I was not emotionally prepared
exactly.
for anything.
And it's like let me just like state it. Let me just say it on the show. Like, you should always question the authority that's above you. You should always question the actions and what authority is asking of you. And it's like, that's a healthy thing. And it's like, you don't... like how much you rebel and push back against that authority is sort of like, that's a decision you have to make for yourself, because we live in a capitalist society and we have to keep our jobs and we have to like
the money.
And then we have to like keep out of trouble with the police, and like the times that you decide to push back are up to you, but it is entirely your right to push back, and it's entirely your right to question whatever is happening to you or whatever is being instilled on you, right? And that's the opposite of the message that we got growing up.
And being a servant is not a personality.
Thank you. Oh God, that's hard stop. All right.
Brady
That's
Harden.
That's it for the day. That's it for today, guys.
Like a graphic of some kind.
So Carrie, you find yourself in this church with this authoritarian. I mean, if you've listened to the Rick Allen Ross episode, this lady just checks off every fucking box that we talked about on that episode of a cult leader. And we're gonna actually, let's take a break and then we'll get back into that, because that's sort of the next chapter. Bingo bango.
We'll be right back right after this. Okay, Chuck, are you ready? We only have one shot. We got to make this work.
Wait, you didn't give me...
Just read your lines. I'll give you the paper. Okay. Psst, are you guys ready? Are you ready? All right. Are you ready to deconstruct with friends?
What the hell? Where did all this come from?
Deconstructing your faith used to be lonely and boring as hell.
Wait.
But no one must deconstruct their faith alone ever again when you deconstruct with friends. Chuck, tell them what we mean.
That's right, Brady.
Yeah.
The Life After has a... what the hell, Brady?
I went full on Jumanji on this one, but keep going. He's a rental by the hour.
The Life After podcast has a secret Facebook community and Slack channel for people deconstructing the Christian fundamentalism and other oppressive religions. Meet new people and deconstruct with friends.
Nice job, Chuck. You even got the echo.
Thanks. That was kind of cool, I guess. Oh God, he's touching me with his trunk.
You can apply for the secret group.
It's wet.
On our Facebook by answering 3 entrance questions. Your membership is hidden, and the admins keep the room constructive and helpful.
Now, can we get this elephant out of here?
Nope, probably not. But we can
Deconstruct with friends.
Welcome back to Life After. We are here with Carrie in Australia. Carrie, you did a really cool job earlier kind of using, describing what made your community, high demand community, is that the word, the phrase you use?
Yeah, high demand is sort of like the new term for cult these days, particularly in the academic literature. It's because I think cult has become quite sensationalized. Gets used a lot.
Well, we had a cult expert on before too, and we wanted to make sure that we were using the right terminology, because technically with a cult it has to fit like XYZ, blah blah blah. But we realized like the terminology, like it isn't like, oh, you got all the requirements, now you get the gold cult star, That's not the important. The important thing is to know, hey, the situation that I'm in is toxic because of this, and this, and here are the ways that I could be getting out of it, or that
Absolutely.
I can have the critical thinking to.
Well, I think a great way to talk about that would actually be to share with you how I sort of discovered that I was in a high demand group. But so I came across this test. Okay, this is hilarious. I literally Googled, am I in a cult? And then I found a test, and it had 15 questions, and it was pretty clear. But then I was like, okay, I'm not going to make a decision, for my entire life based on a quiz on the internet. So I found this amazing list. I will send it to you guys later. It was by a guy named Joe Navarro, and he was he's a former FBI psychoanalyst.
Okay.
And he had this list of 50 traits of cult leaders, and our church ticked 48 of them.
Damn.
So we had, Well,
what finally?
That for me was
what kind of prompted you to finally Google that?
I reconnected with my sister for a little bit, who had left the church, and she had been sort of driven out of home by our extremism. And she got back in touch with us, and she told us, she's like, you guys are straight up in a cult. And I was, well, that's pretty extreme. But I Googled because I was curious. But the real moment for me was when I was on the worship team, and our pastor used to want us to get to church about 2.5 hours before the service.
Ugh.
Like most churches, you get there and you actually practice the music and singing. We weren't allowed to. Like, we'd get there, she'd show up, and then we'd try to practice, and she'd be like, no, you just got to trust the Holy Spirit to work through you. Like, oh my God. And then she would literally preach to us the entire sermon that she had planned for the night.
Whoa.
Before the service, and then we'd have to get it again.
Whoa.
And the thing is, her sermons were not short. They would go sometimes for 3 hours. Sometimes we'd be at church up until 1 a.m. And if we tried to leave before that, we would get reamed in front of everybody. We would just get publicly humiliated.
Whoa.
Jesus.
And
that's intense.
We were not allowed to miss any church meetings. And it got to the point where I was attending church 4 to 5 times a week because that was demand on me. So, like, the more deeply you were in leadership, the more expectation there was of you to show up and do things. And yeah, she took control over every area of our lives. As a result of the trauma that I experienced as a child, I developed seizures. I started having seizures, just petty mal ones. And they could never figure out what was going on because I used to have EEGs and stuff, and I didn't have epilepsy. And by the time I was 22 or something, I saw a neuropsychiatrist in Melbourne, and he said, look, I think it's a trauma response, to be honest.
Wow. That's intense. That's really intense.
So this next part. I was at work one day, and I had a seizure. And I got taken to hospital, and I actually, once I came to, I left. I refused to stay, and I ran away because I knew I was going to get in trouble. And then my pastor found out that I had a seizure, and she told me to go home and that I wasn't to leave and that she'd meet me there. And I went home, and she showed up, and she had a Bible, and she yelled at me and screamed at me, like, literally, because she would scream. And yeah, she just told me that I had failed God and I didn't have enough faith because I went to the hospital, and how dare I have a seizure, and how dare I go to hospital, and all that kind of stuff. It was really horrible.
Fuck.
It was a very spiritual warfare focused church. And so there was a lot of emphasis on demons and angels fighting for our souls.
So it was as if your mental health and your physical health were like not only like somewhere between like demon possession and like your fault, right? I mean, that's seems to be.
Well, yes.
What a
one of the
shitty
things
neighborhood.
she told me to do. So one of the things that she did too was she told me I wasn't allowed to see my counsellor anymore for childhood sexual abuse stuff because Jesus is my wonderful counsellor. So I ended up stopping that. Yeah. And look, this is so interesting. I'd be so interested to hear what you guys think about this. So like, you know that like that place as an adult where you know that you have to be responsible for yourself and you have to take accountability for like how you are in the world. But then there's like the side of you that is like so fucking indoctrinated that it almost doesn't feel like you have power or control over anything.
Sure.
That is how I look back on my old self. Like I have a lot of compassion for her now. I didn't for a long time because I thought, well, I still did the things that I did. I still made the choices. Okay, so I was watching Mindhunter. Okay, this is great. I was watching Mindhunter the other night, and it was the Charles Manson episode.
Okay.
And there's this part where he talks about everybody has a circle, and they're in the circle, and like they are responsible for what's in the circle.
Yeah, okay, I remember this part.
Yeah, you remember this part. And we're not responsible for what's in anybody else's circle. And basically the FBI investigators were like, well, that's easy for you to say if you're putting stuff in other people's circle. You know, like that's what Manson did. He never got his own hands dirty. he made it so he conditioned his followers so that they would just of their own accord do what he wanted them to do. And that's really how we became under Michelle's control. I became a mini Michelle. Like, yeah, I was a victim, definitely, but I became a perpetrator too. And that's hard to live with.
Yeah.
I mostly forgive myself, but do I have days where I feel guilt? Absolutely. And I let myself feel it. I mean, I guess that's part of being human. You experience guilt, and that's okay. Just don't.
It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, like when you're, the way we grew up, like guilt is like has actual consequences, right? But at this point in my life, I'm like, oh, guilt is a mechanism to help me become a better person that doesn't have any actual consequences, you know? It's like, whereas, so it's hard. It's easy to convolute the two when you're.
Well, I think what fundamentalism does is it takes universal emotions that could be helpful for us and then tries to attribute them to a supernatural thing. And so it becomes like whenever I tell you a story about yourself and to make you feel bad, and then you feel the guilt that I make you feel because of my storytelling, then that guilt, that feeling that you have now becomes an internal confirmation to the supernatural shit that I just spilled on you, you know? So I think that kind of is what happens with us is we get used to that feeling of guilt, and it becomes some sort of self-policing for us, that when we feel it, it's more of a, oh shit, I've been caught. I've really fucked up this time. You know, I'm going to go to thought jail, instead of what it really could be for us now. And what it is for us now is this is a good feeling, a good reminder that I need to do better, that I need to not, like you were saying with people having that circle, you and Manson, about having that circle, when my circle, overlaps in yours in a negative way, that's what I need. That's what I needed to apologize for, and to like find ways not to do that. Well, and
even, I mean, I would even say like guilt can be it's also a chance to question your value system, even if it may be an opportunity for you to say, oh, I need to do this better, but it also might be an opportunity for you to like look at yourself and say, am I holding myself to too high of a standard?
Or are these standards even necessary?
Yeah, right. Or is somebody else manipulating me into feeling like I wronged them when I'm really just making space for myself? You know what I mean?
Shit.
That's also totally. And guilt, like in evangelicalism, doesn't give you space for any of that. It's just guilt. Guilt equals conviction equals.
It's a one note.
And then there's like that whole rhetoric about like what's guilt versus what's conviction, because guilt can't be from God because
fuck off, right? Oh my god. I hate that. I'm really like interested lately in this. I'm loving following this dude on Instagram. His name's C3. His name's Chris, and he's so great. He has a podcast called This Esoteric Life, and he's like one of the most grounded, coolest people ever. And he did an episode about intuition, and like ever since leaving Christianity, one of my like missions for myself was to like recover my intuition because I just had completely shut it down. And like I feel like my body is my intuition for the most part. Like if I feel something in my body now, because I've done so much healing work, I feel like I can trust it. But he added this like new dimension to intuition, which I'm just loving right now. And it's like these really practical red flags and green flags of intuition. And one of the ones that really stood out to me was, if you do you have prejudice about this person or this thing? That is your first red flag, that you should step back from making a judgment about something. And you're not taught these skills in fundamentalism. You're not taught how to think critically at all,
right?
To measure things up in order to make not just like logical and rational choices, but compassionate ones. You know what I mean? The amount of time. I mean, let's be honest, we're just all like these walking balls of triggers, like all of us. And perception is fucking everything.
Yeah.
It is, right? Like, and we just trigger the shit out of each other all the time.
Right.
That's what it means to be human beings. We carry all these memories around with us and these emotions. We are so emotional, and that's wonderful.
I do want to be careful not to overuse the word trigger, because it can be like, there's a lot of talk about that recently, about how like it's become this like, it's like people throw it out when really it's like it's important that we associate it with like serious PTSD, so that people that have serious triggers that seriously disrupt their lives don't still have language for what happens. But I understand what you're saying, is that we do trigger each other. We also just disrupt each other. We also bring up things that are disruptive for our everyday life, right?
That's really cool that you want to talk about like that language. Semantics are important.
Super important.
Semantics are really important.
Especially when it comes to mental health.
Yeah.
We need to keep certain things sacred, I think, not to like, shame you or call you out or anything. I think it's a rising as part of the conversation. And I think it's important to point out, yeah, for sure.
Because I'm basically a robot. When I hear trigger, I just think of like, it's like a software thing, at times of like, it's a programming thing, because, you trigger something to happen, and so it's an initiation. And what you're saying is that we're constantly just hitting each other, initiating these negative memories, these negative thoughts, and positive ones. But when we're in fundamentalism, we're not, like you said. I loved what you said about like the compassion didn't make sense. Who do I give it to? Who do I withhold it from? Because it's not at all intuitive, is it? It's not. It's oh, well, you beat your wife, but you said you were sorry. We are cool now. Oh, you're gay? Fuck you.
Yeah,
there's
right. Yeah.
Oh, you murdered a whole bunch of people, but you asked Jesus in your heart afterwards. Oh, well, you're fine. But there's just no there's no rhyme or reason. And what you're talking about is like finding systems to where you can make sense of shit and have it based on real compassion of real people, and not on just some weird arbitrary rules.
And feel like, let's be honest, Christians are like, oh, you need to be led by the Holy Spirit, not by your soul. I'm like, what do you think you're fucking doing? Like, you're walking around, you have feelings about everything, and then you claim it's the Holy Spirit.
Right.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I say that because I used to fucking do it.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, absolutely. We all did it. Yeah. So, okay. So you have, you obviously had some very traumatizing experiences in this cult. We could, like, it seems like there's a lot there, and we're not going to like unpack all these terrible. Exactly. But you have these moments that helps you realize, like, I am in a dangerous situation. I need to get out of it. And I really like your response to that, because you weren't ready to deconstruct fully yet. You were still kind of like clinging to the idea of Jesus or the person of Jesus, but you were like, I can't separate what is good and what is bad from my Christian experience. So I'm gonna, like, what was your response there? You kind of, I really like what you did.
Well, I just said bye, Jesus. But it wasn't that, like, it was very melodramatic. I'm a Leo, so I'm all about the drama. So I had to, like, I was living with my auntie, because one of the things that happened post leaving the church was my family just went to shit, and I ended up not having anywhere to live. I had no job, and so I was like homeless for 9 months, and I ended up crashing with my auntie for a little bit, and it just got to the point where, like, I couldn't read the Bible, couldn't listen to worship music or pray without being triggered. Sorry, Chuck.
No. That's real shit.
Valid.
No, that's an actual perfect example of what a trigger is. Yeah, go. No, that's fine. Yeah.
I was like, this is not going to work anymore. Like, I fought for a whole year. I've gone to all these churches. I've tried to connect with my Christian friends, and most of them were great. Some of them didn't want anything to do with me. So I was like, I've got to, like, come up with some, like, really dramatic kind of mind ritual. Like, I had no framework for rituals at that time. I wasn't a Catholic, those heathens. That's what I used to think.
Right.
You guys hate Catholics.
Everybody
Anyway.
did, yeah.
Unfortunately.
Brady. And I love you, dude.
We don't. The official stance of the Life After is that we don't hate anybody in particular, except for Mitch McConnell. And a few other people. There's a short list. We'll put it on the website.
Like the FBI.
But all
top
Catholics
10
are not
most
on that list.
Not all Catholics. Hashtag not all Catholics.
Continue.
So, I was like, I've got to like sort of ritualize this in my mind so I can seal the deal, because I felt like I wasn't going to be able to close the door on it unless I did that. So I imagined like Jesus. So ridiculous. I imagined Jesus on this like pyre made out of wood, and then like I set fire to it in my mind and like sent it out to sea, and I was like, bye Jesus, in my brain.
Yeah.
And then I just walked around. I had a walk, and I was like, it's fucking done. It's done. I just, yeah. And it was like, I felt this need to tell my friends. Like I had to sort of like go around one by one, breaking the news to them. One of them, he, bless his heart, we're still really good friends today. He came to visit me and like, so I've got something to tell you. Like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm pregnant. And his face was like, he was so scared for me. And I was just like, dude, that was amazing. No, I'm not a Christian anymore. And he's like, oh, okay. Just as long as you don't become an asshole. That's the only thing I'll hold you to.
I love that.
Okay, I can deal with that. That's a good rule. Yeah, so it was really quite a quick thing. And then that was when I made my decision to like explore everything. Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Expound on that a little bit.
Well, I finally downloaded a dating app.
There you go.
This sounds familiar.
It opened up a whole new world. Let me weave you a tale.
I like the way you phrased
say.
it while you're off the air. You said, I did everything that I wasn't allowed to do as a Christian.
Yeah, essentially, like I had all this indoctrination. I didn't know how to get rid of it. So I was like, I'm going to do like literally everything I wasn't allowed to do to try and like counter that and like push it out. And I knew it was going to be like some of it was going to be destructive. But I also kind of thought, well, a lot of that was destructive too. So, I mean, I've been through the worst of it, I think.
It reminds me of a rum springer, like the Amish, they go on those.
It really was breaking. It really was, like for better and for worse. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your mental health struggles, because I feel like even going back to what we said earlier, where it's just like the effects of the further I get from Christianity, the more I'm like, Jesus Christ, there's just so much wrong.
So much.
There's so much wrong. And it's like your beliefs about authority enabled abuse, right? And the amount of abuse you endured resulted in you. I mean, I think you attribute a lot of that to your struggle with borderline personality disorder and your diagnosis. Yeah. And how do those things go together, and what has that struggle been like for you? And let's talk a little about what borderline means first, because I think a lot of people don't know what it is. I think awareness about what it is and how it works is really helpful.
Great question.
Sorry, that's a huge question, but I think you can handle it.
No, it's great.
I believe in you.
Actually, really easy to answer of all the questions tonight. That's like one of the easiest.
Good.
So borderline personality disorder is usually something that comes about as a result of consecutive traumas. Sometimes some people say that it's like a combination of genetics and environmental factors. That may be true. I mean, but based on my upbringing and things I experienced up until really I was about 26 actually. So it was only 5 years ago. I'm 31 now. Yeah, there was so much trauma there and so many different kinds of trauma. I feel like there was sort of like just this perfect cocktail of mental health issues that were, waiting to culminate in borderline. And so there are 9 symptoms. I won't list them all, but essentially you have to meet at least 5 of 9 to be diagnosed, and I had all 9. I was diagnosed just after my attempt in 2013. I do have a bit of a problem with the fact that I was diagnosed during a time of great crisis in my life. Do I still think that I have borderline? Yeah. But look, I took a lot of responsibility for myself. Like, I use that diagnosis as like a springboard to be like, you know what, I'm changing my life. Like,
that's huge.
I'm taking responsibility for me.
Sorry, before you continue, what are some of the what are some of those checkpoints that you had?
The symptoms?
Yeah, what are some of the symptoms?
Symptoms?
Yeah,
okay,
you don't have to list all of them, but
So like suicidal ideations, self-harm ideations, although that's being challenged now. I think they're trying to remove that from the DSM because like then it's not specifically borderline specific.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like it's like a comorbidity to lots of different mental health issues. Yeah, so there's that. There is chronic feelings of emptiness. Impulsivity is the main. I would say it's like the defining symptom of BPD is the impulsivity, and that played a big part in the reckless behaviour that I experienced. Like, I mean, look, I believe it worked out for the best for me. Like, I learnt heaps. I learnt what was good for me, what wasn't good for me. And it was that second adolescence that, so many of us have experienced in Christianity. Yeah. So the way it played out was that I did put myself in situations that were dangerous. Like, I did get assaulted at the beginning of 2014 by a stranger. And it's because, like, he raped me. First of all, that's the reason why it happened.
We're not victim blaming here.
Yeah.
No. I wasn't saying you were. I was like just making sure I was careful with the language I say, because you know how like what comes out of a mouth is powerful, and I need to reaffirm good things about myself. But I was not being responsible. I was out really late. I missed the last train home I was living in the western suburbs of Melbourne, and I had no way of getting home. I was just like walking around, and I like stayed at this like hotel, like this pub, like, and I met this dude there, and I stupidly got in the car with him, and the rest is history. And then later that year, I started dating a guy who was really bad for me, and he also assaulted me on a regular basis, and a lot of that whole like submission stuff. Even though I was like consciously trying so hard to get rid of it, that inability to like advocate for myself or believe that my voice matters played into allowing him to do that to me. And I ended up getting an STD. I was in hospital for like nearly a month because I was so sick. And like he even dropped me off and went to a movie once. He would drop me off at the emergency room and he wouldn't stay with me.
Wow.
An asshole. Girl, I'm so sorry. Fuck.
Yeah, it sucked. It fucking sucked. I'm okay. But it was all of that. Honestly, I put it down to my conditioning. I've worked so hard to do that inner work and look at like what brought me to where I was and where I am, and believing that I don't have value as a woman. Oh my God. I don't know if you guys saw this video that I posted the other night, but so like I started doing this amazing course with a woman named Victoria Redbard, and she goes by the Tantric Witch, and she does this amazing self-pleasure course, and it sounds like it's all about masturbation. It's not. It's like 30% masturbation. The rest of it is like getting in touch with your body and learning how to experience your emotions in your body.
God, it's so important.
And it is, isn't it? The other night I was doing my self-pleasure practice, and like I just for weeks I had been feeling in my like kind of like in my womb area, like I just kept feeling like God hates me, God hates me, God hates me. And it was like so like it was causing me physical pain. I don't know, some pennies dropped, and I realized a few things, and it was like God hates me because I'm a woman. I couldn't believe I believed that. Like, you know how you can intellectually reason things with yourself and be like, yes, you know, God loves everyone. Like, I mean, I don't believe in God anymore, but you know what I mean? Like, you still carry those messages in your body. You still carry that trauma in your body. And to actually like come face to face with the reality of my actual emotions in my body, that I believed even now that God hates me.
Wow.
Dude, that was powerful.
Yeah.
And like, I don't feel it anymore. It's happening every day. And like, now it's gone. But I had to like be with it.
How did you start rebuilding? I mean, you told this story about how you said bye Jesus, which is, I guess, the opposite of hail Satan or whatever. But, you know, just when you had your bye Jesus moment, what started to kind of rebuild after that?
Look, honestly, I think the bye Jesus followed by the Rumspringa raised everything to the ground so that I could have a fresh start. Mm-hmm. Then this is where you get to talk about witchy shit.
Yeah. Carrie's Instagram handle is Hexvangelical, which I think is just fucking fantastic.
So when I was with my ex, that shitty one, when I was living in Melbourne, I was feeling shitty. He was treating me badly. But I was like, he was really gaslighty. And so I was still allowing myself to be like, oh, it's probably something I'm doing. You know, the way he reacts to me is a consequence of me not doing this enough and not being that enough. And I was hanging out with my friend Kezia, she was raised Wiccan, yo. She was raised fucking Wiccan. How cool is that?
As a kid, that's so cool.
Anyway, I know. It was fucking fantastic. And we became really close. And we went to this amazing shop in Melbourne called Spellbox. And oh my God, you guys, I felt so rebellious. I was like, oh my God, demonic spirits are going to be like entering my body. I can't be in here. But like everything inside of me was like, oh my God, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And we went in and there was this big like wheel. And you had to spin it, like you had to ask a question in your heart and then spin the wheel and it would like land on a number and you had to like pick this little pouch that had the number on it and it would have like a little spell in it, like a little, you know, a bit of essential oil and a stone and like an incantation or something, right? It was cute. And I thought, I don't actually believe this, but I'm going to use it. And that night, I did everything in the ritual at my ex's house and put the stone next to his bed. I went to sleep, and that night I had these crazy dreams. Like all of the shit that I was like dealing with came up in my dreams.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it was supernatural. I do believe that ritual has the power to trigger. So it has the power to be a touchstone for the conscious and the unconscious minds.
Yeah.
You know, and because the issues that I was having with my ex were the thing that I was doing the ritual for, it gave me a really tangible place to sort of like pull all those issues out. And then it worked because my brain responds to ritual really, really well. So that was like the devil's foothold into my life, you guys.
Oh, man. And now he's got a full-on hold on you.
So what I learned...
And that brings us to the point of our show today. We're going to try to pray the devil out. Okay, I'm just kidding.
No, one thing that I learned about...
And deliverance of witchcraft and bisexuality.
Yeah, right. Yeah, oh my God. Your two best qualities.
Bisexuality, man. They're my best qualities. Exactly. You know what's up?
You know, it really wasn't until watching Sabrina and becoming friends with you and other witches that I understood like the importance of witchcraft is kind of just like kind of a fuck you to fundamentalism in a lot of ways. And I don't mean like it's made in response to. I'm saying that what it bases itself on is so contrary to the themes of fundamentalism, because in witchcraft you're talking about woman empowerment. You know, it wasn't until I watched Sabrina that I saw like them as competing fundamentalisms in some way. You know, there was the male hierarchy of in Sabrina they do it with the Church of Satan, but it's, you know, more of like fundamentalism Christianity. But then like the stuff that Sabrina and that you're explaining with other witchcraft is it's about women abstractly and supernaturally getting this power that men normally have and then putting it in a way that you could see, supernaturally, and that's where the power comes from, is from women with a Y, just like strong female empowerment, which is a thing that is not allowed in Christianity necessarily, and is a thing that was not allowed in your life. Sure, you had
just patriarchy in general.
Just patriarchy in general.
I mean, like the Salem witch trials were like Christian, but they're also just like very American, very Western, and very patriarchal, right? It's like, oh, this is like contrary to the established order, so let's burn all these women, right? Let's like drown all these women.
But what I think is interesting about like what you're explaining is you're gaining your power from who you are, whereas fundamentalism, our power came from who we're supposed to be, who we're told to be. Right. And so that finally having the ability to look into your intuition, because I didn't understand about my body and feeling things. I was totally oblivious to that until I was taught by Jamie, who is a witch, and from other sources.
Yeah, it seems like so much of it is about embodiment. It's about experiencing your own body,
so much,
which is like fucking
absolutely.
Oh, man. I'm still working on that shit.
Yeah. And what were you going to say? Anyway?
Yeah. No, that was all true. Wonderful. Yeah. So no, that was definitely true for me. I feel like my journey has it's been a journey, and I've evolved, I feel, from when I first started. It was definitely from a place of resistance when I started. It was definitely a massive fuck you to patriarchy, to God, to religion. It got to a point, though, where, I realized that basing my spirituality on resistance is probably not the healthiest thing for me, though, because...
Yeah. It's not always sense? It's not always healthy to be against something, to like base your movement against being against something. Yeah.
I wish I could high five you right now. Like that was exactly damn. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to be for something. You want to be an advocate for yourself and for, the groups of people you care about, rather than being against, Yeah. I get what you mean.
Yeah, that's 100% right. I feel like when you're against something, it depletes you. It really depletes you, and it takes a lot of energy from you. And that's understandable, like particularly in like activist circles and stuff, like where you are putting your energy out there to, you are doing so much emotional labor and many times physical labor to actually try and bring about change. But when it comes to your own personal spirituality, like it's got to also be a safe place for you. It's not just about fighting. It's also about healing. It's also about, like for me, receptivity has been a huge thing. Not just being, I'm going to use the terms masculine and feminine, but I want to sort of clarify what I mean by that is not the masculine and feminine in terms of gender, but in terms of like the masculine representing dense energy and feminine representing the subtle. And I feel like I have lived out of that masculine energy for a lot of my life. And now I've had to learn to like open up rather than be action oriented and like have that sort of doing sort of aggression that you need to have to make things happen. I've had to sort of like have that openness and that receptivity to like allow things as well. That felt nice to say.
I want to clarify, like there's nothing wrong with being angry and there's nothing wrong with being against things, right?
You're right.
I have a thing on my wall that my partner just gave me that says STL Rebel City, fuck the police. So it's, like
going back to your problems with authority.
Yeah, right. My problems with authority. And that's like my personal hashtag. So there's nothing wrong being against something. It's just that you also have to be for something, and you also have to be taking care of yourself. And it's easy, I think, for a lot of people, especially people with certain personalities, to get so wrapped up in the anger and so wrapped up in being against a movement or the police or the authorities or the patriarchy that you just lose yourself in that, and you drain yourself,
Yeah.
and you're not living your life. You're not experiencing anything meaningful, and you run out of gas, and you really even become ineffective as an activist because you just don't have anything to offer anymore.
Damn straight, yeah.
You know.
Well, Carrie, I feel like you and I have talked about this a little bit too, you know, of like, okay, we leave fundamentalism, right? And that's an important thing. And we had a lot we have to like deconstruct, if we want to use that language, right? The things we have to deconstruct, the things we have to say, this is what we're against, this is what we don't like anymore. But we get to a period where we start rebuilding. And so my rebuilding looked like, you know, I'm like I said earlier, I'm very rational based. Like if I had a reason to believe in the supernatural, then I would do it. But where I am right now, when it comes to Bible and stuff like that, I'm pretty like, I'm a secular humanist, whatever. But what I build off of is, you know, stuff with like hero's journey, secular humanism, rebuilding this or that. Yours is about like witchcraft and using your intention and all of this shit that I just fucking love. And I think that it's such a cool thing because I've said recently, like my goals in life is number one, fuck fundamentalism, and number two, whatever you do, whatever the hell you want after that, as long as you're not hurting yourself or others.
Yeah.
Can you speak on that, like a little bit of just like finding that finding that positive thing that you do want to talk about, which is witchcraft, and how that's been beneficial? How are you like introducing that to people in a way that is not exhausting to you, doesn't feel like it's depleting your energy? How are you finding that balance now?
Right. I think one of the greatest tools that I have ever been introduced to is the use of archetypes. Like, I mean, we talk about them constantly in our conversations. And it really, yes, I am a witch. And that, I think I just want to clarify too, that term means different things to different people. Because some people are quite theistic, and, you know, like the majority of Satanists out there tend to be quite like secular or atheist. And it's like a lot of it is, the focus is mostly symbolic. But there are some theistic Satanists who actually do believe that Satan is a real supernatural being. My worldview my worldview personally has shifted from being a very ultra supernatural, spiritual, like it's still spiritual, but a very, you know, hyper spiritual, supernatural worldview to one that has developed a focus on strengthening my internal locus of control. I want to have intrinsic value. I want to have intrinsic power, and I want to make choices from an informed and powerful place within me. Because, and that started because I didn't ever want anybody to take advantage of me again. Yeah, so it's really been a journey of learning how to stop outsourcing my own power to everybody else, or to even God. Like that includes God. And while I'm into like quantum mechanics and stuff, I would say that is my spirituality. I'm interested in it. I'm interested in what that field is going to glean for us in terms of like what we learn in the future. I don't believe in God. I say that for the most part, I am an atheist. I believe, figuratively speaking, that we are God and we create our own reality and our own meaning in life. And it started from being a complete nihilist. Like I was really into Nietzsche for a while there. Everything is a construct. Nothing has meaning except for what I assign it. Yeah. And it was really depressing for a really long time, but it was really helpful because once I like brainwashed myself for good, I was like, oh, that's true. I can actually make myself believe whatever I want to believe. And
nihilism's kind of a blank. It's kind of like having a blank page in front of you, right? You know,
it is
like getting to that
space. They call that a tabula rosa.
And then like you start, Let's
put on some Latin.
Buffy.
Oh,
sorry. Okay. You look at Buffy like I do.
I never watched Buffy. I know. As such a,
that's going to be the cold open right there.
You would think that I would because I'm basically Abed, like I am a TV like savant, but for some reason
Buffy's hard to watch, man. Especially now that it's HD, like, and you can just see all the low budget-iness of it. You know,
Carrie Maya, she's beautiful.
Yeah, I'm gonna get hate mail.
Oh look, it is bad, but it's like cult.
Yeah. for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good, bad.
Brady, huh?
I know.
How dare you?
I'm feeling guilt. I'm feeling guilt right now. And not good guilt.
I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding.
Guilt or conviction?
I love it. So that became like a way for you to check in with yourself and to, I like how you said the way you worded about like, because I wasn't going to be hurt this way again. It's like you made a boundary like so fucking solid that I could taste it. You know what I mean? Like that
I love
that abstract like decision that you made.
I never want anyone to take advantage of me again. It's like a really powerful statement.
Yeah.
I love that.
And you drew that line in the sand, and I don't know. There's something very empowering about that, especially knowing your story, knowing how people lorded over you in ways, but you got new power, and you didn't get it from some other place, right? That's a power that you found within yourself, and that makes it even more meaningful. I like that about you.
It really does. Thank you. Yeah, no, it really fits in. Like, I love this magical tradition called chaos magic, and it's kind of something that emerged during like the punk movement, like in the 70s. And the idea is that there are so many, like there are all possibilities. Like you don't have to subscribe to one tradition to get the results that you're looking for. And I feel like I'm at this place in my life now where I can like put on all these different hats in my spiritual practice, because that if it serves me, then I'm going to do it. That's why I have like a little Mother Mary, like she's an archetype, and I really I've learned to tap into my mother archetype, take care of myself, and I have to use my archetypes. It's honestly been my only true source of being able to rewire myself to cope in the world and to understand how to relate to the world, or else I outsource my power. So, you know, my internal mother is Mother Mary, and my internal father is like, I don't know, it was Odin for a while, but I don't know, he's a war god, so it's kind of weird.
Ned Stark.
Yeah. Pardon?
I said Ned Stark.
It's a start, yeah. Yeah, and you know, like, I think Chuck and I had this discussion over Instagram, like we were talking about Akasha from Queen of the Damned. She's been like a really big one for me.
Yeah.
She's not a traditional archetype, but we can make archetypes out of anything to serve our purpose.
Yeah.
And Akasha for me is like, I kind of did like a little, come on, Akasha. Before I like came on this morning.
R.I.P. Leah.
Come on, bitch. Help me out.
Yeah. I love that.
Because I don't have a lot of faith in my ability to advocate for myself, and that is just that is just a truth for me. I don't have a lot of faith in it, but if I can tap into a part of me that if I can pretend myself there, then I will do it.
I love that, because I feel like I have channeled the energy of certain people and characters my whole life, but I've never really like called it anything. I've never thought of it as an archetype, and I've never thought of it as a means of like tapping into a part of myself, you know? But I feel like that is just so fucking powerful. And my favorite part about it is you choose where you want to derive your energy from, right? Like, I fucking love Donald Glover, man. He's not even a fictional character, but he's like I channel that Donald Glover energy, man, when I'm trying to make something.
That's so meta right now, because I'm an Abed.
right,
you know?
Yeah.
But
try an Abed in the morning.
But one thing that really hit me,
because before I was going to surprise you guys and be like Chuck and Brady in the morning.
There it is.
Really
I love it.
Didn't even have to. It just came up naturally.
That's how it works.
But you know what we had before? I was thinking of the Bible verses, like, and we'll need to close here in a minute. But like the Bible verse that was like, "You're in the cloud of witnesses." You know, you've got this Colosseum of all of the saints that have gone on before us, and you know, and that's kind of like what sainthood is when it comes to Catholicism, is that you got each one of these archetypes, and it's one of the benefits of polytheism that you have so many of these other things that you could relate to. But you know, fundamentalism says no, none of that.
I thought
Catholicism figured a way to kind of
was monotheistic.
and, you know, Catholicism figured a way to kind of do a little bit of a reach around.
Yeah.
But like, what you're saying is so beneficial of like, you take what helps you and you leave behind what doesn't. And these archetypes are helpful for you. They've been helpful for me, but my entry to, archetypes has been television, and that's where our worlds kind of overlap in ways with, Hero's Journey, talking about those things and to be able to kind of like see the world and finally have precedents for the everyday life that don't involve thousands of year old stories, but instead for me involve a television character that I can see, like Marshall on United States of Terra, who's realizing he's gay. I could watch that and be like, shit, I want to pick things up from this life and I want to be able to implement that. Or watching Kimmy Schmidt and seeing how she's overcoming her religious trauma syndrome and finding her place in the real world. Each one of these characters, each one of them represents something about us, and it's functioning the same way that you do archetypes. And I think that's so important. And for listeners too, to take what helps you in your deconstruction and in your reconstruction. Take what helps you and leave back what doesn't. If something's harming you, or get rid of it, please. But outside of that, don't be afraid to do things that open up abstract. This is a secular atheist saying this to you right now. If there is some spiritual practice or anything that is benefiting you, grab it by the horns and run with it, because you are no longer under some dominion from a jealous God who only wants you to pay attention to him. Pay attention to yourself. And if paying attention to yourself looks like joining a fucking coven, then join a fucking coven. Figure out what is going to help you and make you thrive the most. Because the difference is to pull from what is who you actually are, instead of trying to pull power from who you are told you need to be like. Because when you're when you're told what you're going to be like, it's always going to be about what you don't have yet, about what you're trying to do, right? And it's always coming from a place of lacking. But when we find our intuition, we find our empowerment from inside of ourselves, you can't fucking take that away. And it's just going to grow. It's just going to be more and more and more.
Love it.
Yes. Wonderful.
Carrie, if any of our listeners were interested in witchcraft and or resources about about archetypes and about like how to like understanding that and diving in, what would you recommend?
Well, can I recommend my book?
Yes.
No.
An introduction.
Which is not why we even have you on the show, by the way.
Right.
Like, this was planned before
That's
you wrote
totally
the book,
different.
and then it's like, all right, let's just promote this.
Now let's promote the book. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you may promote your book on our show.
You guys, bullshit. An introduction to witchcraft for ex-evangelicals.
Very cool.
And it's a mini course that I packaged as a Kindle book. So you can literally just search for it in Amazon, on Amazon. Or you can message me, you can DM me, and I will talk to you about it and give you more information.
What are your handles? Social media handles.
Hexvangelical on Instagram.
Pretty much everything.
There are a few. Okay.
Everything Hexvangelical.
Hexvangelical.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Yes.
Beautiful.
Very cool.
Carrie,
thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you for being brave and vulnerable and telling your story. You are an awesome and resilient person, and I admire you a lot. And I'm really glad we got to meet today.
big time.
And just a reminder to all of our listeners, we do have a secret community on Facebook and on Slack where you can process your deconstruction and your religious trauma in a safe place.
With friends.
With friends. With friends. And yeah, right. And we also have a Patreon if you want to support our efforts. I guess we can't really say we don't get paid for this anymore, because we do have a functioning Patreon that works. But I mean, honestly, both of us would like to put more time and effort into it if we can, which means like less like real people job stuff. So we're always and there's always like things that we would like to do that will present resources for people and reach out to people that we currently can't reach that cost money. So we promise that we will use your money in a useful way, because we just really care.
Well,
about
and also
the
I'm
cause.
giving 10% of the sales from my book to you guys too.
Oh, thank you.
That's a thing for your listeners. If they want to grab my book, you guys will be getting that for the rest of the year.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
Carrie, thank you again. I'll talk to you soon on Skype because that's what we do. Yes. And thank you so much for finally being on the show. Chuck, thanks for being a wonderful host today. And
you
listeners,
too, Brady.
Listeners, thank you so much. The last thing, rate, review us on iTunes. It helps us a lot.
Rate, review, subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
But until next time, remember, do you want to say it with us, Carrie?
If you don't go to church.
Oh my God, really? Yes, I do.
All right, thanks.
Right, okay. If you don't
go to church, Sunday is just the second Saturday. All right, we'll do it on 3. 1, 2, 3. And remember, if you don't go to church,
Sunday.
This is a bad idea with the Skype delay.
Yeah, anyway. That's true. It's not. We can't do it. If you don't go to church,
Sunday is just the second Saturday. We'll see you next time.
Fuck being in the middle, I am no Malcolm, I ain't no Martin. More like 95 Spartans kicked out the garden. Back to back stab at God King and ask for his pardon. My mind trying to break out the margins, writing reflections on loose leaf. Listen hard, my jargon is Darwin, inciting infections of unbelief. Like what in the hell is a spiritual walk? But meditating on TED Talks, elevating events that are non-stop, circulating your views in a closed crop, cutting verses up like a chop shop, with copies and signs like a bookshop, pasted in like Bibles on backdrops. Feeling bad for shit on your laptop, it's a bad prop for holding beliefs in a sad book, relieving your grief in an outlook that promises peace with a bait hook that doesn't release. I was caught on the line of repression, asking myself the same question over and over and over with no progression. Decided to change my only direction ahead, leaving the foe for the spread, headed to hell in my bed. If living is lying down, then I'd rather be dead. They said our thoughts are dangerous, nobody's can we trust, like we're made of